we are the presenters responsible for DG3. So before we start, let's first look at a video of what is going on around the world while we are here on the Bonmaru. So if you have not figured out already, the video that was shown is about a 7.4 earthquake that have recently hit Sendai and a 7.8 earthquake that have just struck New Zealand while we're on board. So these are just two of the many evidence to prove that the destructive force of nature, and it also shows that disaster can take place anytime. That's why it's crucially important to understand and learn about disaster risk reduction. So now let us go straight to our presentation and talk about the content. So what are we going to talk about? First, we're going to tell you about the aim, summary of discussion session and activity, which is responsible by me. And then Jude will come in to talk about the lesson learned outcome. Number 6 and number 7 will be responsible by the beautiful Lita from Indonesia. So now let us go straight. Expanding the understanding and knowledge of the common disaster and also international framework. Identify and learn about current DRR program with the hope to develop a better ones. So these are the mental compass that has been guiding our 5 discussion sessions. So the discussion session for our DG was very productive. So what have we discussed so far? So in session 1, we talked in general about the disaster that's occurring in ASEAN nation and Japan. We utilized our pre-program assignment, and then we also look at what is like the Holy Bible or Quran of DRR, which is the Hyogo framework and the Sendai framework. Then we narrowed down the scope in session 2 to talk about disaster prevention, or known as DRR, what we're going to do before. So during this part, our friends from the Philippines, Japan, and those who have encountered firsthand with natural disaster came forward and shared their experience. And then we also look at the component to lead to an effective DRR program. And then after what is before, we talk about what's after, which is disaster relief. So during this session, we talk about the program that's going on in the countries, in respective country, and ways that we can improve because there are challenges and ways to overcome the challenges. Session 1, 2, and 3 were just the tip of the iceberg. In session 4, we dug up previous framework, program, and project to look at the lesson to be learned, because each of us are going to implement a project, so we need to learn from the lesson to implement a better project when we get back. And this was the matter which was discussed in our session 5. And what are some of the activity? So during most of the session, we illustrate our group's result through poster presentation, which I'm sure most of you did the same. And also, there are various videos which we watch and later do reflection upon. And there are also, what I love the most is the fun, energizing activity that DG3 has always been carrying out to wake and energize our members. Now let's Jude tell us about the lesson learned and outcome.
So the members of DG3 came from various experiences, and we have different levels of understanding when we talk about disaster risk reduction. So with all the sessions we experienced, the members of DG3 have learned the following. First, Evidence indicates that households and livelihoods constituting a higher percentage of all losses in recurring, small-scale and slow-onset disasters compared to a one-time and rapid onset disasters. Evidence also indicates that exposure of persons and assets has increased faster, thus generating new risks and steady rise in disaster-related losses with a significant economic, social, health, cultural, and environmental impact. Second, there has to be a broader and more people-centered preventive approach to disaster risk. Disaster risk reduction, or DRR, need to be multi-hazard and multi-sectoral, inclusive and accessible in order to be efficient and effective. Recognizing their leading regulatory and coordination role, governments should engage with the relevant stakeholders, including women, children and youth, persons with disabilities, people living in poor conditions, migrants, indigenous peoples, volunteers, the community of practitioners, and older persons in the design, implementation, policies, plans, and standards. Third, effective DRR requires system, partnerships, and incentives. DRR requires an all-of-society engagement and partnership. It also requires empowerment and inclusive, accessible, and non-discriminatory participation, paying special attention to people disproportionately affected by disaster. A gender, age, disability, and cultural perspective should be integrated in all systems, policies, and practices. And women and youth leadership should be promoted. In this context, special attention should be paid to the improvement of organized, voluntary work of citizens looking at incentives. Fourth, disasters have demonstrated that the recovery, rehabilitation, and reconstruction phase needs to be prepared ahead of time. Disaster is a critical opportunity to build back better, including the integration of disaster risk reduction into development measures, making nations and communities more resilient to disasters. Fifth, reducing disaster risk is a cost-effective investment in preventing future losses. Managing the risk of disasters is aimed at protecting persons and their property, their health, livelihoods, and productive assets, as well as cultural and environmental assets, while promoting and protecting all human rights, including our right to development. Six, effective disaster risk management contributes to sustainable development. To address disaster risk reduction and management and the building of resilience to disasters with a renewed sense of urgency within the context of sustainable development and poverty eradication, and to integrate as appropriate both DRR and the building of resilience into policies, plans, programs, and budget at all levels, and to consider both within the relevant frameworks. So with all these outcomes, we have also specifically learned this following. One, understood the international framework for disaster risk reduction, specifically the Sendai framework. What is Sendai framework? Sendai framework was adopted by the United Nations World Conference on DRR, which represented a unique opportunity for every countries, including ASEAN and Japan, to adopt a concise, focused, forward-looking disaster risk reduction interventions. Second, the members of the DG3 also understood the natural disasters, specific and contextualized natural disasters in our specific locations and its effect to our respective communities. Third, with that, we have identified the DRR preventive programs in our respective countries. And with that also, we have developed disaster preparedness plans based on our context and based on the appropriateness of our country. And with that developed disaster risk reduction plans, we have identified the key roles of the youth, our key roles of agents of change in disaster risk reduction. So to give you the institutional visits overview and the concrete plans and programs of the members of DG3, may we have Lita from Indonesia.
Thank you, Jude. During our country programs in Japan, we were given the chance to have 2 institutional visits. The first institutional visit was a presentation from Association of Disaster Education Promotions. Generally, we got insightful and useful information on ways to deal with various disasters. We were also involved in a scenario-based activity which required to set disaster preparedness plans and the action that would take within a time frame of the first 30 seconds until 3 years after disaster happens. Second, we went to Ikebukuro Life Safety Learning Center. We experienced 4 exercises in the center, such as short film viewing about earthquake, and then earthquake simulations, smoke simulation, and how to use fire extinguisher properly. Okay. This is a video was played during earthquake simulations. Earthquake was happened in 2011. More than 20,000 people died. The Great East Japan earthquake. We were able to learn basic skill on how to protect ourselves. With the simulation provided by center, we learned important of stuff like this, and then cover and hold approach, which will help when disaster strikes in our community. So disaster happened in the Great East Japan earthquake. And we went also in Vietnam to Nong Lam University. We had lecture session and gained new knowledge about water, environment, natural disasters, and climate change. Besides, we also work and interact with local youth and close by having lunch together. In our discussion group, we are able to develop future projects that contribute to reduce the risk of disaster that it happen in each respective country. Basically, there are 2 major groups of actions. There are disaster risk reductions and disaster relief. What is disaster risk reductions, or DRR? Disaster risk reduction, or DRR, aims to reduce the damage of causes by natural hazards like earthquake, flood, drought, cyclones, and through an ethnic prevention. And we have future project plan for DRR from 8 countries. They are is Japan. Japan have a program Expedition of Your Country. You can see in the poster, we have 11 poster and represent the project. Japan aims to let university students know the natural hazard in their own cities by holding fireworks in the target areas and learning the city's history in terms of natural disasters. Singapore have the program The Chile Movement, aims to raise awareness about harmful effects of global warming and incorporate green lifestyles. Thailand has a program Young Preservers, aims to create a youth-led advocacy platform as part of the country's national disaster management. Brunei Darussalam have the programs Awareness Raising on Water Pollution, aims to educate and prepare the community about natural disasters and maximize the public awareness. Cambodia have the program Youth Green Camp, aims to raising awareness on natural disaster and its consensus, as well as promoting living green. Indonesia have the program Indonesia Disaster Awareness Campaign, aims to invite people to be aware about disasters. Myanmar has program Stand Against Flood, aims to let people know what causes flood and its effect by posting flood preparedness plan at schools. Philippines have program Project Ready, aims to make youth ready for disaster through a youth training program. Disaster relief refers to the process of responding situations, providing humanitarian aid to people and communities who have suffered from disasters. Laos has program Youth Hero, aims to raise awareness of the youth in Laos society about disaster and broadening youth understanding about the RR. Malaysia has the programs Life Safe Squad, aims to raise awareness toward flood, and Vietnam has program Roof After Flood to help Pin village. So for DG3, take home message to deliver is don't be scared, be prepared. The core meaning is we need to scientifically understand the disaster so we can be prepared for disaster when it's happened. We are ready.
Thank you very much for your presentation, DG3.
questions.